Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be taking a look at everything currently on the way in the vintage collection for the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi. Now keep in mind, everything that we do cover in this video is going to be releasing in 2023. None of it's expected to release this year, so we do have a little bit to wait before we start seeing any of these come out. Now before we look into any of these upcoming releases, I would just like to remind everybody of just how poorly Hasbro handled the other original trilogy 40th anniversaries. Back in 2020, we got the carbon freezing chamber for Empire Strikes Back, and it took us forever to fill out the figures for that scene. We're still waiting on the Ugnaughts for it, and it was really an underwhelming year for the anniversary of a beloved movie. So if there is one thing I'm happy about, it's just that Hasbro's actually doing something, and they seem to be doing a lot for the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi. So let's just get right into it, and I want to start out with something that isn't specifically a Return of the Jedi item, but can work just as well as one, and that's the Book of Boba Fett's throne room. Now this works also as a Jabba's Palace throne room, which I plan to use it as, but this set is really amazing. We've had it announced for quite a while now. In fact, the pre-order window for it has closed, so if you haven't ordered it, you may have to resort to eBay if you want to get an order in, but I am very excited for this thing. The detail is the best we've ever seen in a playset, with tons of accessories and movable pieces and everything. The Bib Fortuna pack-in figure is great and will work really well if you do want to go ahead and set this up as a Mando end credit scene or Book of Boba Fett kind of display. He's also coming on a card back, so if you do want to just use it as a Jabba's Palace set, you can leave him on the card back. Now, a big complaint a lot of people have about Hasbro's handling of the Book of Boba Fett is just how few figures we currently have for it. Really, the only figures that we'll be able to put in this whole throne room are Boba, Fennec, and this Bib Fortuna. Now, to be fair, there weren't too many more characters that we saw in the palace throughout the Book of Boba Fett, but getting a Black Chrysanthemum, getting an 8D8, getting some of those others to fill it out would be really great to see. In terms of Jabba's Palace, we've had tons of figures released of that group, many of which are pretty definitive, coming in either the Legacy Collection or TVC, and TVC is actually getting a reissue of many of those figures, so let's go ahead and move into those. The first one, and sort of a confusing one for me that they're reissuing, is Salt Murray, or Yak Face. The reason why this is confusing is because this is a TVC 2.0 figure, not a TVC 1.0. So far, we haven't really seen them reissue any TVC 2.0, and apparently this one is still pretty easy to get a hold of if you do want to get it at around retail price, so I find it kind of weird that they're going ahead and re-releasing it. I guess the reissue I'm not going to complain about. What I am going to complain about with this figure and all the other reissues I'm about to be talking about is the $16.99 price point for each of them. That is ridiculous. It looks like TVC is going to be moving to a $16.99 price for mainline figures, and that is just a real shame. There's no way that a 3.75 figure is worth $17 unless it's a deluxe release like Paz Vizsla, and even then they're upcharging that one even further. But especially the fact that they decided to premiere this price point on a wave of reissue figures with a figure that's still available at retail price on the initial release, that's just ridiculous. There's no way the value is here. This comes off as very arrogant after their announcement that they plan on increasing profits by 50%, and collectors are not going to be happy about these price points. It's up to you guys if you still want to get these figures. Personally, I'm going to be passing on all these reissues. I already have the initial releases of these figures, so I don't really need a new one. If you guys do want these figures and plan to buy them at this price, that's totally okay. But Hasbro needs to expect that people are going to start getting a lot pickier with their choices if they're charging $17 per TVC figure. Anyway, now that I've got the complaining out of the way, let's look at the next Jabba's Palace reissue they're doing, and that is Woof, which I think is actually a great choice. Price point aside, Woof was an excellent figure in TVC 1.0. Probably one of the best Return of the Jedi figures that we got in TVC. A great sculpt all around, really nice soft goods on the figure, and it's one that started going for a pretty high price on the secondary market, so offering it to collectors again, especially with the throne room coming out, is a great thing to do. Next up, we have Nikto, Skiff Guard. This guy also was going for pretty high prices on the secondary market, and I really like this figure. Again, it's one that I have from the TVC 1.0 release, but I think there's something unique about that light blue color scheme that he has compared to a lot of the other skiff guards. I have him set up in my sail barge diorama, and he looks great on there, so I'm excited for more collectors to get the chance to get this guy. Rounding out the official reveals of these reissues, we have Kithaba Skiff Guard. This reissue is of a TVC 1.0 figure, and specifically the version of the figure that came with the red headband. The initial release in TVC 1.0 had variants where some came with a dark green headband, some of them came with a red headband, and that red color is the more accurate one, so I'm glad they're sticking with it. This was also a good choice for a reissue, as a lot of collectors who got it in TVC 1.0 missed out on getting the red headband version, so now they have a chance to get the accurate one. Overall, I am pleased that they decided to reissue a lot of these figures, especially with the throne room set they have coming out. It'll go well with that. It'll go well with anyone who has the sail barge and the skiffs that they released a few years ago. A lot of these figures, other than Yak Face, which still kind of confuses me why they're doing that one, go for high prices on the secondary market, so again, giving collectors the chance to get these at retail price is good. Now, what they decided to go for that retail price is crazy, but that's a whole nother thing. Moving into the set of releases centered around Endor that we have coming out, the first one we're looking at is the Speeder Bike, which is going to be releasing next year at $45. It's already up for pre-order, so if you want to grab one or multiple of these things, you can hop online and order them. This is a newly sculpted bike, which was a decision that kind of came as a surprise to a lot of collectors. There is a Speeder Bike from 2012 that the community is very happy about and would have loved to see a reissue of, but Hasbro decided to go ahead and put in the budget on this speeder bike to do a complete retool. Now, normally this would be received really well, Hasbro going ahead and deciding as a surprise to completely resculpt a new vehicle. That's great. What confuses a lot of people, however, is the decision to go ahead and only slightly retool the Scout Trooper figure that they're throwing in with the bike. Now, first of all, I do think it's good that they're giving us a Scout Trooper with the bike, especially at a $45 price point. There's no way a speeder bike is worth $45, so giving us a figure is good, and putting it on a card back is also good. I didn't expect them to do that, so I am happy about that. Do I still think the combined total is worth $45? Probably not, but honestly, I'm more upset about the $17 price point on mainline figures than I am about something like this, so I'll at least deal with this. Anyway, that Scout Trooper is a mold that we've been seeing for quite some time now, and a lot of people in the community have been calling for them to completely resculpt the figure. There are a lot of problems with that Scout Trooper, everything from it needing rocker ankles to not having great articulation to the undersized helmet, and Hasbro did go ahead and retool some of these things to address those issues. There's a helmet that's bigger and looks much more in scale with the rest of the figure. However, the biggest thing that they needed to do that they didn't is update the wrist articulation. This guy just swivels at the glove. He doesn't actually have hinges on the wrist, and that makes it really difficult to pose anything in his hands. That's a real shame, especially if they're valuing figures nowadays at $17 each. I do think the bike looks amazing. I think the Scout Trooper looks pretty good for the fact that it's an old sculpt with what they did with it, but at $45, you do kind of have to work to justify ordering it. Next up for Endor, we have two items that were actually just recently announced the other day. The first one is the Endor Bunker playset. This was pipelined a while ago, but was just officially revealed, and I'm pretty happy with how this thing looks. I like all the detail around it with the moss and the weathering. I like the double set of doors. I think the inclusion of the Rebel Commando in Scout Trooper disguise as a figure and putting it on a card back was great. I'm glad that they're kind of breaking with that trend of making us buy two playsets in order to get the full display. This one seems like it'll just work on its own. All of those things I think are good. I know a lot of people wanted an interior to the playset, and I kind of did too, but I'm okay with what we got and I still think it looks good. Now, what more people are kind of upset about is the price point at $60. I don't think this is as egregious as the next item that we're going to take a look at, or even as the $45 speeder bike, but I do understand people's complaints. If you want to pass on this playset for the price point that it's at, I don't blame you. Personally, I still went ahead and ordered one though, and I look forward to it. The next reveal was a reissue of an AT-ST. That's right, it is a repaint of the sculpt that we've been getting before for a while now, and the biggest issue with this sculpt was how difficult it was to get it to balance. The legs had infamously loose joints, and Hasbro went ahead and actually announced that they did clean those up and tighten them. We don't have this thing in hand, so we can't see how good of a job they did, but I'll take their word for it and say that it's going to be much better now. giving them the benefit of the doubt on that, that does kind of clear away the issues that I had with this sculpt. Overall, I think the sculpt looks really nice, it's proportioned well. The paint job and detailing that they gave on this version of it looks amazing. If it can stand on its own and balance well, then that's all great. What isn't great, however, is the price point. $90 for this, and this isn't a new sculpt. Oh, but there is one more thing they're throwing in with it, and that's a nearly 20-year-old Chewie repaint. Look, honestly, I think the optics on throwing in a Chewie sculpt that old probably is doing more damage to this set than just not throwing any figure in at all, and I think that's totally justified. It's ridiculous that they're still reissuing figures that are that old, especially figures of main characters, when the community has been so vocal about wanting definitive versions of these main characters. I do think the repaint looks nice, I think the promo shots do pose him in a really nice way, but if they're going to be asking $90 for a reissued ATST that we've seen plenty of times now, and a 20-year-old Chewie, that's ridiculous, and they have to realize a lot of collectors are going to pass on this. Now that I've gotten my complaints out of the way on a lot of these Endor releases, I do want to go ahead and give them a compliment. I like that they've actually been giving us a focus on setting up a diorama. Like I talked about with the Throne Room release paired alongside the Jabba's Palace reissues, I do think it's great that they're giving us the chance to build out the whole scene of the Battle of Endor. I myself ordered these items. I actually ordered multiple speeder bikes, as much as I had complained about the price, and look forward to setting up a display. The one thing, however, I feel like is missing is Ewok representation. It would be great to get a reissue of the catapult, or get an Ewok glider, or even an Ewok 4-pack to help build up some of the figures. I'm sure we haven't seen everything that Hasbro plans to release for the 40th anniversary next year, so I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that we'll get some good Ewok representation. Now that we've looked at the official reveals that they've given us for the anniversary, let's go ahead and look at some of the pipelines that they've announced. The first one here is Weequay, rounding out the list of Jabba's Palace reissue figures. I think this is a great choice to throw in. He's one of the more expensive skiff guards that you can have to buy on sites like eBay, so it's good to give collectors another shot at the figure. I think the sculpt is also great, so I'm excited to see it being offered again. Next up is one that kind of confuses me, and that's Endor Han. Now, we already got an Endor Han in TVC with his trench coat, and I guess I'm happy they're giving that figure another shot because the version they gave us was not great and based on a really old sculpt, but it's weird for them to go ahead and resculpt a new version of a figure that they've already given us in TVC. They don't often do that, so I'm interested to see if this one's going to be pulled from a different scene where maybe he doesn't have his trench coat. Next up is probably the most exciting pipeline on the way, and that's Admiral Piet. Why is it so exciting? Because Hasbro is finally giving us a new sculpt for the Imperial officer. That means there are so many different reuses that they can use for that body to give us other figures, like Tarkin, like Yularen, like Thrawn, like Jerjerrod, which is also another pipeline that we have on the way. I'm happy about that one. Overall, this is a really exciting pipeline, and I'm glad that they're finally giving us a definitive version of the officer. We'll see how good this sculpt really is. Next up, we have Niednub. Niednub? I don't really know how you say the name, but this one's exciting as well. He was actually rumored to be getting a reissue alongside with Dengar, Logray, and Bespin Gown Leia quite a while ago as an upcoming repack wave, but we never really saw that go anywhere. Now, they haven't announced a reissue of the other figures from that rumored wave, but it'll be interesting to see what they give us. Rounding out the list of pipelined figures, we have Vader with a removable helmet. This one's going to be pretty awesome because it's going to be based on that new Dark Times Darth Vader sculpt, which is one of the best sculpts Hasbro's ever given us for a 3.75 figure. I'm interested to see how they do the whole removable helmet and how good of a likeness they can get on that head, but I'm really excited for the figure. This wraps up our look at the upcoming releases for Return of the Jedi 40th anniversary next year in the Vintage Collection line. Overall, I think we have some excellent releases on the way, mixed in with a lot of reissues that the community is not too happy about. Not helping out the fact that a lot of these are reissues are the price points that they're asking us to purchase these reissues at. Nobody's happy about those. On a more positive note, I do want to give them credit for actually going all out on an anniversary of a film. We haven't seen them do that before, and the fact that they've acknowledged that mistake and are giving us so many options for the Return of the Jedi anniversary is a good thing, and I'm excited for it. If you would like to see more reveals, posts of figures, vehicles, and playsets, go ahead and check out the Jedi Collector on Instagram. Link will be in the description.